Hey, everybody, welcome to the Elseworlds Exchange. I'm Sal, and I'm joined today by Josh Williamson. I'm sorry, I threw it to you like you knew what you were like. You knew what I was gonna do.
I'm still patiently.
What is he?
Hello,
What's his
everyone.
plan? Yeah, welcome to the show, man, and thanks for coming back.
Yeah. I always like coming on here, and you know, you and I always like talking to you about comic book stuff, and I feel like sometimes this kind of thing is the best way to get some of the messaging out about DC or the stuff I'm working on. And then I also get to talk to you at the same time as doing it, so it's like the fun version of it.
Right.
It's like a canned. What do you call it? Like a canned interview or something?
Yeah, I think that's how that works. I don't know. I didn't go to broadcasting school. I have no idea how it works. Like everyone in my wheelhouse, I just went, me too, and then just bought stuff incrementally until it looks like I know what I'm doing. But
awesome.
But well, thank you. I'm so excited because you have a bunch of things in the pipe. You got these things finally coming out. As of the recording today, Birthright 49 came out.
Oh yeah. Andre is almost done drawing. He's like, it's crazy. We got to a point where like Monday, we were like, are we gonna have this go out on time? Like,
right.
Are we actually going to print on time? And then everything came in, and we're like, all right, we're racing to the finish. But yeah, we're almost there. You actually remind me of some stuff I have to do today. I have to write all my stuff is done as far as I have to do a proofing of it before it goes to print. But in the last issue, and this one, the 49, the one that just came out. Sean Makowitz, who is the editor on Birthright, he was the editor who brought it into Skybound. He's been the editor the whole time. He wrote like a really nice like 1-page like goodbye letter in the back.
Oh, cool.
And he was like, "So now it's your turn," and I'm like,
"Oh no!"
Like, I have to write like a really nice like thing. I kind of have it figured out. Yesterday, I was thinking about it. After I read his, I'm like, okay, I kind of know what I want to write about, and have kind of a final say. But I always think about David Lynch's whole thing. I think I told this before, right? David Lynch is like, somebody was interviewing him, and they were like, "What is your most?" They were talking about his movies, and he was like, "Eraserhead is my most personal movie."
Right.
And they're like, "Do you want to talk about that? Like, like, do you want to have anything to say?" And he was like, "No, the movie is me talking about the movie."
Right.
And I always think about that, where like I love talking about comics and doing all this stuff, but there are times where I'm like, when it comes to like getting really nitty gritty, sometimes I'm like, the book is here. So it's here with issue 50 of this 50-issue run to like end it exactly how I wanted to end it and do this like emotional ending that I had planned from the beginning, and then be like, and then here's a 1-pager where I explain everything to you.
Okay. Yeah, or undercut the emotional like punch. It's like reading the end of Preacher and then being like just a whole 2-page thing of Garth Ennis being like, so anyway, let me explain to you why this book means something to me. Like, we know.
Well, it's funny you said Preacher though, because Preacher actually opens the letter from Jesse.
Yes. It ends with one.
He does. It kind of wraps up. Like, it's interesting because, with Preacher, that was also Garth Ennis, like, expressing his own thoughts on a lot of these ideas throughout the run, and his experiences and stuff. And so that book kind of ends with almost him giving the audience, like, a letter of what he felt in a way. It's from Jesse. Yeah. But it's still, it's like, it's Jesse to Tulip, but it's still, like, him kind of explaining.
Yeah, it's deeply personal.
It is. It's still really good though. But so it's funny. Like, I'm writing. So with Skybound, they're doing this thing called Skybound X, where it's going to be this anthology.
Can you explain what exactly Skybound X? Because I think, and I'm only asking, it's not just for me, because I also have no idea, and I know my wife's explained it to me 3 times, and I'm still like clueless. But I was in a comic book store the other day, and no one at the comic book store could explain what it was. And I think that there's a lot of like people going, so there's this thing, it's like a crossover, I don't know. And my wife said it was an anthology, but please, what is Skybound X?
It's an anthology. So it's a weekly anthology series that is showcasing all of the books that Skybound has done over the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. So you have things like obviously Walking Dead, Extremity, Daniel Warren Johnson, also like Falcon, and there's a Manifest Destiny book in there. Obviously, like stuff that's other Kirkman stuff. I don't like ruin Kirkman's game, so it's
of course
on in there. But like one of them is that whole thing of like Rick Grimes 2000, which was like a gag in Walking Dead.
Yes.
So that is like an actual story, which is really, really cool. So the story I'm doing is they came to me and they were like, we want you to do they asked me about this like, I don't know, like a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. They were like, can you do a Birthright story? And I was like, yeah, totally, I'll do that. But I'm like, that's really weird because it comes out a month after the last issue of Birthright.
Oh no.
So I was like, I've already had everything I have to say.
Yeah,
Like,
and then this little additional thing.
so I'm like, well, how I was actually talking about this yesterday. Like, how deep should I get into it? You know, should I make it like a coda to the book? Is it something, you know, you have to read to get the whole experience? I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. So it's actually, I did another book for Skybound years ago called Ghosted.
Yeah.
And so it's actually a Birthright Ghosted crossover. Two properties meeting, and it is a letter. It's a letter from Mikey's brother. He's like writing, it is kind of a coda, but not really. Like, it's mostly just for fun. But it's him writing a letter to Mikey while he's in Terranos. Like, he's on this little adventure and stuff. So, but then he ends up meeting one of the characters from Ghosted. And so that just becomes like a fun thing. And it's also an opportunity for Andre to draw horror stuff a little bit.
Yeah.
Because we do fantasy and, you know, we do fantasy, the family stuff, but we have never really done horror. And Andre's a really big fan of horror. Or actually, the next project we're going to work on is a horror thing. So it's like kind of a easing into that. Like the next Creator Own book that Andre and I want to do will be it'll be like a horror thing. So kind of
oh, cool.
But you know, so basically Skybound X is like an anthology. It's like a weekly thing, just kind of showcasing all of these books that Skybound has done over the last 10 years.
Yeah, which is considerable. And
it's a lot. Yeah, it's fun. Like I was talking about it yesterday because I had a question about my story. My story also kind of bumps into something else that Skybound does. And so I was like, is that all right? Like, are they cool with that? He was like, yeah, it's totally fine. And we were talking about it, and he was just like, all the stories are really just fun. Some of them are definitely like maybe more meaningful than others, you know, but for the most part, the intent was just to have some fun with it.
Sweet. I know that Skybound has been getting a ton of eyes as a result of the Invincible show.
I'm behind.
Okay, really I won't spoil it for you, but
I don't know the changes. Like, that's true. I was just talking about this with them yesterday because we were talking about Invincible, and I haven't caught up on it yet, so I don't know all the. I just decided last night I was going to start over from the beginning. Skybound actually had they had like a screening for it before it came out, like a week or two before it came out, and I got to watch it with that. It was funny. They gave us like food and stuff. They food delivered to our houses so we could have dinner while we were watching it.
That's awesome.
But watching it like that was different because I was watching it on the TV in my office while I was talking to like James Tynan because he was also watching it.
Right.
But he was watching it in, you know, on the east side.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm like, you know, I think he lives in Brooklyn. I might be wrong. He'll correct me.
Yeah.
But you know, we were like chatting to each other while we were watching it, so it's like a different. And I was also kind of working because I'm on my computer, so I'm like watching.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's different than like sitting down with your wife for dinner watching a show, as opposed to doing a screening with some friends.
She was not that interested into it, and she started playing Animal Crossing on her Switch. And I was like, "That's fine, whatever." I'm gonna watch this whole thing. But then she missed the whole ending.
Oh no!
Like, she had her head down the whole ending, and I was just like, "Oh man, did you see that?" And she was like, "What happened?"
You're like, only the rest of the show.
Only the most important part, because then the second episode starts and the dad is like laying, and she's like, "What happened?" I was like, "Well, this is what happened. The dad did this," and she's like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Oh man, all right." I'm explaining.
Okay, rewind.
So I had to explain the whole comic to her, basically. But
right.
Yeah. I mean, I love working with Skybound. I have other projects with them in the pipeline, and I've worked with them for a while now. It's been like, I've known them for before there was a Skybound. I've like, known them, you know?
Yeah.
And so, doing something like Birthright, getting to do 50 issues of a book, which is such a rare thing. And not only just that, but like, it's also a fantasy book.
Yeah.
You know, like, I remember back when I was starting out, one of the jokes I would hear from people was like, don't pitch your 50 issue fantasy story. Like, don't do the fantasy thing. And then somehow that's what I ended up doing. Like, all right, cool.
Yeah. And you got in right before the bubble, like right before, you know, like you see all these D&D type books or all these like different, you know, trend chasing fantasy type stories that have become kind of ubiquitous with the indie scene.
Yeah. And I don't know, I'm not as much of a Dungeons and Dragons person as most people. Like, you look at someone like Jib Zub, who obviously that's like a lifestyle for him, and he's so embedded in it, you know, that it's, and when I look at all that stuff, I'm always like, man, they know it. They know that Dungeons and Dragons stuff so well. For me, I was more interested in using that as a setting to tell this like really emotional story with these characters, and also set pieces. Like, once I could see what Andre could do, like once I knew all these crazy things that he would draw, and he would kind of draw anything that I was like, it's on now. Like, we're gonna make you. This is gonna get nuts.
Your world got bigger. Yeah.
it got bigger because of that. Because the first issue mostly takes place in like a police station, and then there's little snippets of stuff. But once I started seeing the stuff he enjoyed drawing, I was like, all right, let's go. Let's start doing all kinds of crazy stuff. Like he would take it as a challenge to draw, like, because I'd be like, okay, here's a room, and it's this giant room, and it is full of artifacts from all these different like fantasy stories and all this stuff. And there's a dragon there, and like I would just like start throwing stuff at him. And then he would take it on and be like, all right, I can do it. And then he would do research and find all this other fantasy stuff, and he would put it in there. And he just, like, he really go for it. So I love working with those guys. Like, Andre's really great. Yeah. But yeah, that came out today. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So
one more to go. It's super weird.
More to go. Now, were you pressured for yourself? Because I know that, like, I'm sure that Skybound, it wasn't like, it's got to be 50. That you were like, I got to get it to 50. Because you see all these seminal runs of creator-owned stories where they end on, like, 47 or 62, you know, and it's just, is there like as a comic book nerd, for me, I'm always like, we couldn't have rounded it out. Couldn't have been 100 issues. Could have been 60 issues.
Walking Dead ends on like what 197.
Yeah, right? Like that close to the finish line.
I know, but you know what? And I appreciate that. I appreciate the idea of surprising people, because I think that we struggle with in comics is surprising people. I think about this all the time, not just in terms of like, I don't know, I it's tough because I feel as though I have two things with this. It's like sometimes, like I think surprising people is important, and it's interesting. Like sometimes people announce a project and you're like, that makes sense, that's cool. Right. You know, you're like, but that's it. And then sometimes you're like, wow, that's awesome. I did not expect that. That sounds really cool. That's surprising. So Kirkman cutting that short when he didn't cut it short. He was like, I'm done. Yeah. And I think he looked at it because you could easily, that last issue of Walking Dead is like 4 issues worth of material. Yes. Realistically, look at it because it's super big. He could have, if he wanted, stretched it out. Yeah. But that's the whole thing. He didn't want to stretch it out. And he wanted to be like, this is a surprise to people. I mean, I know it was anger. Some people were really angry about it. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was really cool. They're pretty funny. Like, I'll get some of the inside track on some stuff from them. If I'm like able to like ever hang out with Kirkman, I'll hear little bits of stuff that's coming, and sometimes I'll find out about stuff ahead of time. Yeah. That one I did not know about until like the week before. And I was just like, man, that is brave. That is awesome. You know, to say like, no, I'm doing it like this. But to answer your question, I always knew the beats I wanted to tell from the beginning, and I knew all the big, like I knew what each arc was about. Always, right? Like there was little pieces here and there that kind of moved around. A couple characters kind of came out of nowhere and kind of became more important than they originally were intended to be, you know, where I found their voice and I was like, I like this character. I'm going to integrate them into the story, and a couple things that moved around. But yeah, I always knew that issues 41 through 45 were like, oh, this is the fight. This is all about the fight. And then these issues were all about the epilogue. I think by the time we got to that, it was like, I could have maybe ended it at like 46, maybe. Yeah. You know? Yeah. But then I was like, I don't know, part of the thing we've done with this book is play around with a lot of the tropes. And so I wanted it to be those kinds of like epilogue tropes, right? Where it's like you just get all the pieces. But also I wanted to leave that world and be like, I don't have to come back. Like there's no reason to come back. I mean, there's definitely some stuff on the table, but it's written in a way that is like, no, I can end here. So I wanted to just touch on everything. And then with this whole last arc is called epilogues because each issue is an epilogue. They're all standalone. So it's like, here's an epilogue for this character. Here's an epilogue for these characters. This, you know. And then 50 will be all about Mikey. Like there's one last witch that we've had since the beginning that was kind of like a scary witch when they were kids. That's still alive, the last of it. And so she actually disappeared at the end of 40. And I on purpose like never mentioned her again. Right. Until now where I'm like, oh, there's one left and he has to go find her. He has to go find the one that was like the scary witch when he was a kid. And that's the person he has to go up against last. But I've already done the big fight. Like when he went up against like the main villain lore, it was, you know, we did a whole issue of just splash pages. And then we get to this issue and it's not going to be a big fight. Like it's going to be much more of a like battle of the minds kind of thing about going up against this thing that you were afraid of when you were a kid. And that's the thing that he's confronting.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it wraps up the whole thing. And then, you know, but I could have, it's like looking at it, I could have maybe you could probably jump from 45 to 50 maybe. But then you miss all this like emotional stuff and you get, you know, it isn't the same.
Well, that's part of the journey. Like you need to have all that stuff.
Yeah.
If you can get it. Well,
I mean, I got lucky. I think early on. So I don't know how far we were into the book. It was 2015, so we were past year one. I think I had written 11 at this point. So we were past the first year of the book, and we were looking at the sales, and we were also looking at the foreign sales. So we were looking at trades, like everything. We had enough data to be like, we could make it to 50.
Right.
Like we were looking at everything, and we were like, if it stays where it is, like on an actual like expectations chart. That's always the thing about comics. Like, I think it's funny when I look at all the analysis of sales and stuff, and it's like the publishers, they factor in the idea that it's going to lose readers. You know, they factor that into the expectations of a series.
They're never like taking off their hat going, "What? How is this possible?" Like, look at the drop off from 1 to 2.
There is always a possibility of a cliff. Like, we talk about this a lot. Like, sometimes book will just go like this, and I was like, and you never know what's going to come. That's the thing. Yeah. It's kind of scary. That's when you're like alarmed. Thankfully, it doesn't happen that often, but when it does, you're like, oh my god. So with Birthright, we were like, okay, if it stays on this path at these numbers and it does this, but also we had trades, because once you get to a certain point with Birthright, it's about the trades. Like, people are coming in and buying, you know, like there's gonna be 10 of them total. So like, I'm not gonna get a new reader at 49.
Right.
You know, if anything, they're gonna come in and they're like, that looks cool, and then here's the first trade for $9.99. I'd rather start here and go through than spend $2.99 or it's I don't even know.
Right.
It's $3.99. So you're like, you know, I'd rather wait for the trade. So you know, once we knew that, so Makowitz and I were Sean Makowitz, the editor, him and I were talking, and I was like, I have an idea of what we should do. We should go to Disneyland. and we're gonna, while we're waiting in line at Disneyland, we're gonna talk about all 50 issues while we're waiting in line for rides, because that's what you should do. Like, you just stand there talking anyway, right?
Exactly.
Like, instead of him and I going and sitting in a room with a whiteboard for a day and mapping it out, let's go do something different. Let's go have some fun. You know, have lunch at Disneyland and just go on a bunch of rides and, you know, bullshit about the book. So anybody who was in line for Haunted Mansion
heard everything.
In November of 2015, yeah, they heard the whole thing. Like, they know the ending. They know the ending, because we were talking about the whole, like, the whole last issue. I laid the whole thing out for him there of like, this is where everything is going. So they heard the whole thing, but we basically mapped it all out, and it hasn't really changed that much from that. Aside from, like I said, there was a couple characters that kind of came in with that I was like, oh, I'm more interested in this and this. I did run out of room one time. Like, there was a story I was doing that was about Mikey learning magic, and I just messed up. It's one of those things where you're like, because I would always try to dedicate flashbacks to certain arcs. I would make it so the main thrust would continue, but the flashbacks wouldn't. And so I just messed up one time. We had to continue into the next one. Mm-hmm. So it's, if you're reading in trade, you're like, that's really weird. The flashbacks, if you read them all in trade, you're like, the flashbacks usually kind of like cap off of a certain time period, or a certain point is made. And then on one of them, it doesn't until the next issue, being the next trade. It like threw me off for a couple issues. So, you know, but we, for the most part, I was able to stick to the plan and then make, you know, this big. But it's interesting with that, plus Flash, plus a lot of other stuff I've done. I'm always doing these like long runs, because even Nailbiter was 30 issues plus the 10 for Nailbiter Returns.
Right.
I don't know if I would ever do anything this long again. It's like with creator-owned books, I don't know. I feel like I'm more interested in doing these like shorter things. But even the shorter, I mean like 6 issues. I mean, even though I'm doing some stuff that is shorter, like 6 issues, and I'm doing some stuff for DC that's shorter, I can't imagine myself staying on something for longer than 2 years at this point. Like 25 issues worth of material. It's just, I feel like after doing the 100 issues of the Flash, I don't know if I could do it again. Especially because that was double ship. It's such a, you know, every 2 weeks for 5 years, I was like, here's the Flash script. Over and over again.
Yeah. And that's not something that you get used to. You're just kind of like, okay, I did this. I don't want to do it anymore.
Well, it's weird now because it's like, you know, I'm writing so many books for DC. It's like, you know, we've talked before that it's like I'm writing 5 books for them. Plus, I have other things in the pipeline for beyond that. There's like 3 other things that we're talking about when I finish these 5. And it's like I've already finished one of the 5. Like, I've already finished it. And Infinite Frontier is almost finished being written. It'll be written this month. And then it's like with Robin, obviously, it's going on. And there's 2 other things that haven't announced yet that are still going. And then Future State Gotham, I'm co-writing, so it's a little different. It's like a good friend of mine that I've known for a while, and he he's doing most of the heavy lifting on it.
Mm.
And then it's like, but then I have like 3 other projects that are all short that I want to do. One has been in development for years, and it just didn't work out because of changes at DC. That now they were like recently we were talking, and I'm renewing my my exclusive with them, and so the process of renewing the exclusive, it was like, so like sign on for a few more years. I was like, well, here are the projects I want to do, and they were like, cool, all of them. Let's just keep working, just go. But yeah, like I have all these plans I want to do, but all of them are shorter. Like not really, they're not all like, oh, I'm going to stay in this book for 100 issues. I have this huge plan. It's like, I very much know where I want to leave certain things, but a lot of them outside of Robin, I'm like looking at my wall. Outside of Robin and this other book, the rest of them are all minis. Those are the only 2 that are going. Oh, I guess like Gotham Future State's ongoing.
I heard that. Yeah, I heard about Future State ongoing and or Future State Gotham, and that's with Dennis Culver. I'd like to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, good. That's good.
Okay, so I was talking to my associate Benny, the comic historian, about it. He saw it. He was like, "This has got to be something else. Like this was something else, and then we turned it into this." Was Future State Gotham like part of the original Future State initiative? And it's like, well, we did, it wasn't done. Let's just put it out now. Like, why Future State now? Like Future State is over. Why now?
I don't want to answer why now, but I mean, Future State was like a hit. It sold really well for them, and I think
that's true.
It did better than was expected because it wasn't as many. It's like me and Bendis are probably the people that have been on it, that have been on books longer. Someone's going to correct me and mention other creators, but it's like, in terms of been around for a while, it's like, there's some of the really great creators like Mariko that was on there, and
yes.
There were definitely people in there that are really talented. When I wrote Red Hood, the 2-parter, that was kind of a like, last year I was just like a crazy workaholic because I wasn't going anywhere, so I was like taking on everything, and they were like, hey, do you want to do anything Future State? And originally, as you and I talked about, like my plan was to leave DC after Flash. Like I was ready to go.
Exactly.
And they were like, well, there's some Future State stuff coming, and I was like, well, we kept going back and forth on it, and one of the editors, this was like almost a year ago, so it was really, really early into the Future State plans. He was like, do you want to do a 2-part Red Hood thing? And I was like, yeah, but only if you kind of let me do it the way I want to do it, which is just super different. Like, I don't want to do something like I normally would do. I just want to do something very different. And like in the first issue of the Red Hood stuff, it's like Jason doesn't talk for the first like 14 pages of the book. It's everyone else is silent. And I'm like, I want to do something like that. I just want to do a very specific thing. And I turned it in. They really liked it. They had a couple notes, and I went in and made some changes and stuff. And once we started seeing the art come in and the colors coming in, the editor was like, hey, would you want to continue this? And I was like, what do you mean? I thought Future State was 2 months. And he was like, well, we're talking about different things that could continue. This is one of them. Would you want to just keep on doing Red Hood? Like, just keep going from here.
In that.
And I was like, I can't. Like, I don't have the time. Like, I looked at my schedule, and I was just like, I don't have it, And then I was like, well, what if I wrote it with someone? I could make that work, because if someone was able to do a lot of the heavy lifting, and I was able to do like a specific part of it, I could maybe make that work. It was crazy at the time. Like, I was actually less busy then when I said that than I am. I was doing much less then. I was like, yeah, I could do that. That'd be fun to do. And it's Dennis Culver is like a good friend of mine, like somebody I talk to every day. So I'm like, all right. Him and I talk about comics every day anyway. Let's just throw in trying to write a book in the middle of it.
Exactly.
And so I pitched them that, and they were like, yeah, let's do that. They had wanted to work with Dennis for a while, and they knew him. So they were like, all right, we can make this work. And so we just started working on it. Like we knew it was going to be this Future State Gotham book. That was the thing. The only thing that kind of changed was I was like, well, is it just going to be Jason, or is it going to be everybody? Is it going to be Red Hood? And they're like, well, no, we want you to do Gotham. And I'm like, well, that means I need everybody then.
Right.
That means I got to have everybody. Like, it has to be every piece of Future State Gotham kind of moving forward, all through the point of view of Jason. And you'll see as it goes. We haven't announced it yet, but like issue 4 is going to be not a standalone issue. I won't even call it an interlude. It's an example of how the book is not just about Jason. Like, it's going to have a thing where the story is going to splinter off for a moment, and you're going to see like 2 characters that are also involved in Future State kind of have like a little bit of a, lack of a better phrase, interlude. before we come back around with issue 5. But it was done to kind of show you that like this isn't just Jason's story. It's about Batman. It's about Harley. It's about, you know, Nightwing and Tim and everybody in Duke, like, you know, and the Batgirls. Like, let's just have it all in here. So we're just trying to find ways of showing you that it's more than just Jason's story. It's more than just a continuation of that.
Right.
But no, it was not something we threw together.
Okay. I mean, I don't mean to put it that way. It's more just like
no, dude. I think this stuff is so fascinating to me right now of how, you know, like it is not my job to run DC Comics, and I'm not like, and so, but I'm also not like a marketing manager or anything like that. Like my job is to write comics, and I try to promote my stuff as best as I can. Yeah. But I do recognize that like there's a lot of stuff out there that is like little bits of misinformation, people speculating and trying to figure out the math of why certain things are happening.
And that's the thing, yeah.
It's fascinating to watch. Sometimes you're like, oh no, that's not what's happening. Like I saw somebody this week posted this thing of like some website posted a thing of like we're gonna turn Roy Harper into a villain. That was their headline. They're like, Roy Harper is the next villain, and I wanted to tweet them with just a like,
no.
Just a gif of somebody being like, no, that's not happening.
It's not going to happen.
Not on my watch. So yeah, it was one of those things where like sometimes you see that stuff and you're just like, I don't even know how to respond to that because I don't want to like spoil stuff at the same time, but I don't have time to like answer everything that's incorrect on the internet. Could you imagine?
Right. Oh no, exactly. Even our little corner of the internet where it's just about comics, you could get swallowed up, especially if you normalize that kind of behavior, because then they'll come to expect it.
Yeah, because I mean that's why I don't really like. I mean,
engage. I
don't engage that often, but mostly I don't have time.
Right.
Like I think you and I talked about this before. Is that like I usually have everything's blocked on my computer from certain hours of the day, so I can't see anything. There are times where I'm like, all right, I'm going to focus. The next 8 hours, I'm just going to write. So everything's tuned out. The only things I leave open are my email and then like my chat, so I can hear from like James or Dennis or other writers or other editors at DC, like Slack, so I can talk to them if I need to. All that stuff is open.
Right.
And every once in a while, someone will send me screen grabs of something somebody said on Twitter, and I'm like, that defeats the purpose, dude. Like, I'm trying to not be distracted, you know?
Right.
But you know, yeah, no, we didn't. It was something we talked about of being like, hey, let's try this. And so I think once the numbers started coming in for Future State, they were like, let's greenlight this. Let's go ahead and do it. And we started writing and just started hit the ground running and making this book is something different. I mean, that's one of the things I like about DC right now, and you can kind of see this if you start looking at some of the books that are coming out now and some of the stuff coming out. They are trying stuff and they're doing different things. There is some experiments, like the fact that Gotham is black and white. You know, it's like that was a choice that was made by editorial. He was like, I really want to do this as a black and white thing. Here's what we're going to do. And we started talking about it a lot. And I was like, let's go. Let's do it. Let's do like a grayscale book. Yeah, but they're open right now, like looking at some of the stuff that's coming from DC. It's cool to see there's just some stuff in there that is like a little bit experimental and just trying different stuff, because it's like, I don't know, you get to a point where like I've seen that. Like sometimes things in the past, you're like, that's just continuing something I've already seen. It's cool to just try something different and see what lands and see what doesn't. There's some books, dude, that are coming that are like,
haven't seen that.
There's some stuff that like people, like a lot of us writers and like artists and stuff will kind of we pass around art that's coming in to kind of like haze each other, you know. Like sometimes I'll show stuff to Scott, or like yesterday James was showing me something that you're just like, oh my god, it's so cool. And then it challenges you. It makes you be like, I can beat that. Like I can pull this. And you know, Scott will send us stuff from his image books, and like I'll show him stuff from Robin, and then like Tom King will text me some stuff from books he's working on that haven't announced yet, and I'm like, oh really? And I'll send him stuff that I have that I'm working on, and be like, this stuff is cool. But yeah, there's some stuff coming that I think people will be surprised by. But I think that's what we were talking about before. Like, it's cool to kind of try something different and show just different stuff and really, you know, make DC exciting. Feel like, you know, you can't be super predictable. I think we talked about that before. It's like, it's nice that it isn't super predictable right now. At least trying.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the part of the distinction of doing that is understanding, I think, that unpredictability is not the same as not being steady. You know, like people look at a shakeup and they think it means that because it's not familiar, it must be falling apart. You know, it's why like old people think the world is end, or you know what I mean? Like why old people think that the world is ending because the young people are coming in, and why like, you know, you see your favorite restaurants turn into something else and you assume it's going to fail, and it's like just because it's different doesn't mean it's necessarily an indicative of like of failure or of a problem, systemic issues.
Yeah, this is something I think about a lot of like having to take myself out of the equation sometimes because you know, before it's like I'm very opinionated. Like I
Right.
think annoyingly so sometimes to comic book publishers because I definitely will email or text or raise my hand and be like, this is what I'm thinking. And sometimes I can be wrong. You know, I can be wrong about something. And I try to take myself out of it a little bit, take a step back and look at it and be like, clearly this thing is working or has worked. Like,
Right.
it may not necessarily even be for me, but it is clearly for someone it is working. And I think that's something with DC is that like DC obviously went through a big change this year. There's no like hiding that. It's not a secret, you know, there's a lot of changes and but the people behind the scenes are working really, really hard to make cool books and just trying something different. And sometimes that is going to look unrecognizable at times, but even then, not really. I mean, the books are still coming out monthly. There's still a bunch of stuff that's coming. Superheroes are fighting bad guys. You know, it's like it isn't that different, but there are some changes. There have been some turnover in our industry, and I think sometimes people are just. I don't know. It's interesting. It is an interesting thing to kind of watch at times, but with DC, it's I think there's a lot of opportunity. I mean, that's really what Infinite Frontier became about. You know, it was like we talked before. It was like this idea of starting a new chapter and opportunities and the possibilities were endless, and you could do things you couldn't do before. I mean, I think you and I maybe talked about this on Flash that it was like when I was wrapping up my Flash run, those last 2 issues plus Speed Metal, man, I was so nervous because I kept waiting for someone to come in and be like, "No, you can't do that."
That's right. Yeah.
You know? And then they let me do it, and I think there's a lot of stuff we wouldn't have been able to do before that we're able to do now. And but then also people are just trying different stuff. Like it does feel, I don't know, it's like DC kind of had this plan, right? They had a plan.
Yep.
And then plan changed. And then you look at then what happens is after that, they had an opportunity to be like, all right, cool, what do you want to do? You know, to creators, to editors, like everybody was like, what do you guys want to do? What is something different you want to try? And it's like, all right, cool, let's try something cool. Let's introduce some new characters. Let's mix it up a little bit. And that's kind of where we're at. And it's really exciting. I definitely think it's going to take a minute to get there in some places, but there's so much cool stuff coming. I don't know. I'm really excited whenever I see the new projects coming. With like the back group, we do a monthly call with all the writers, and it's a lot of writers because a lot of bad books, but we have a lot of, you know, it's like my screen is filled with people. And we all talk about the stuff that's coming, the stuff we're working on, and it's a lot of fun. Like everyone's throwing ideas back and forth, and just kind of, you know, the connective tissue of it. And then, you know, I talk to the other writers like all the time. Like I talk to Ram V about once a week about stuff that he's working on and things that he's doing next year, and then I kind of fill him in on like my plans for the next 18 months, like all the event stuff that I'm working on. So I'm like, here's all the stuff I'm doing, and then get his feedback on it too. Like I talk to James, like I said, I talk to James Tynan every day about a lot of this stuff. We know each other's plans pretty well, but it's cool. Like we'll go and I'll talk to Tom Taylor. We'll DM each other and stuff. Like he sent me the ending to his Superman #1.
Oh, cool.
So we already talked about it, but I read the ending of it and I was like, man, that's perfect. You know, so it is cool. We get to kind of share all this stuff around and then try to make different stuff. Like I think some of the books that I'm working on, I think will really surprise people. I don't know. I didn't want to do the expected. We talked about it before. I didn't want to go and do like just another superhero book and then follow this kind of format of I'm like, I did that 100 issues of it.
100 issues of this other character, fan favorite, beloved, you know,
But I would say almost everything I'm writing, unless it specifically takes place in a different universe, it's all connected in some way. Like all the deep stuff is very connected. You know, if I'm doing, there's a couple projects, obviously, like, well, you'll see. There's a couple projects that are kind of the side, but for the most part, it's all connected in some way. It'll take some time. This is one thing I think is really interesting about DC is that if you're really paying attention to like all the books, there are weird connections, you know, not just in the Bat books, but all the books have these weird little snippets of connections, and you're going to start to see them come together like later in the fall and then into the next year. You'll start to see, and I mean, like, I don't know how caught up you are on stuff, but it's like this week was the DC Festival of Heroes special. In there, they revealed. Do you know about this? Is this a spoiler for you?
I haven't read it yet. As of the recording of this, it came out yesterday. But yeah, no, I'm cool. I'm down. I'm hip. Tell me.
They revealed that Roy Harper's daughter is still alive in that.
Gotcha.
And Roy Infinite Frontier, and it's like, Ram and I talked ahead of time, and I talked with the editorial ahead of time. So these things all are connected. Like, you're gonna start seeing how these things play out over time, and you're gonna start. I think specifically with the Green Arrow family, because like Connor is in Robin,
yeah,
Black Canary is in Justice League, but she's also in something else later in the year, and it's like, you're gonna start seeing all these things sort of, and like
line up.
Yeah, Barry's leaving the Flash book to go to Infinite Frontier, and then what he's doing there will impact like everything later. But it's definitely kind of this tapestry we're building in DC, starting with Future State, starting with Infinite Frontier, and then going into next year. Like, that stuff is fun to me. Like, when I was a kid, if I was reading a comic and I was like, oh man, they just referenced this comic, like another comic. That stuff was always really fun. So I think that's gonna be really exciting to see.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what people who love DC are looking for, and what it's what you want from an interconnected universe. Is references that build towards something but don't take away from the main story, and you got a lot of that going on, which is fantastic. Let's talk, I guess, about Robin, because Robin debuted, and it is. I feel like there's no way Robin isn't leading towards / referencing other things because of the debut of new characters, and of course, which characters you chose to put on the island.
Yeah, and then what characters I chose not to.
Like, exactly.
And you'll see, like, there's other stuff brewing involving Robin, and sort of what his place is going to be next year, and like what's going on with him. And then eventually you'll see there's another book that I'm writing that it's going to run parallel. Like,
gotcha.
And so they're going to run parallel with each other, and you're going to see, like, I'm curious if we're going to be like, oh, those two things are going to collide at some point. Like, Robin and the other book are going to collide at some point. They're going to, once the other book comes out, there's going to be like a prelude, and then when the other book actually hits, it's super obvious. Like, it's like, I pretty much am like, look, listen, this is going to happen. Like, you'll see. But with Robin, I was very selective of the characters we used, which character we didn't use for reasons, for things that'll play out over time. And then at the same time, like, it's no secret, like, it's Mortal Kombat, and Damian and all these characters in a Mortal Kombat setting is I don't know, man. I was trying to have some fun with it. Like, I wanted to make a book, like, talking with Gleb about this a bit, is that I really wanted to make a book that I would have enjoyed when I was like 13 and when I was a kid, and made this like fun fighting book, but also pace it really differently, like pace it a little bit more like a manga. And then when I started talking to Gleb a bunch a couple years ago, actually, before he was going to do Robin, he was still doing Angel at Boom. We started talking when Angel #1 came out. I just messaged him. I was like, yo, your stuff is dope. Like, we should do something. And I started talking with him. We both have a lot of the same like tastes in comics, and we have a lot of things in common what we liked. And so we started talking a lot about cliffhanger comics. So it was like Battle Chasers and Danger Girl and Crimson, specifically with Roberto Ramos, and Steampunk, specifically. Steampunk, Chris Pacello. Like, he and I, we started talking about all of that stuff a lot, and we were like, we wanted to look like that, even with the lettering. Like, we sent copies of that stuff to Troy to letter it, to be like, I want it like this, dude. Like, make sometimes the words just big for no reason. Just like, like, do more than a bold, like, make it pop and all this stuff. And so we really went in there to try to make something that, like, I would have enjoyed when I was like a 13-year-old kid. That's really what I was aiming to do. And then, and then just have some cool fight scenes, some blood and guts, some just have some fun with it, and tell this cool story about Damian, and kind of take him on a little bit of an emotional journey. Like, to me, every issue is about him learning something. Right. So it's in some way or form, and having to kind of come to some terms with some things, and then just grow as a character. Like, I really want to get him to a different place and do things differently. There's a scene in issue 4 where he essentially says that to Raish, like, him and Raish are talking about it, and he's kind of like, I think we can do something different. Like, I think there's a different way of doing stuff that you want to do. And that's really spoilery, but you get what I'm saying.
Totally. I'm just thrilled we're going to see Raish.
Oh, dude, yeah, the Raish issue is dope, because like Gleb actually isn't drawing that one. He took a month off to catch up. I wanted to make sure Gleb drew as many as he could.
Right.
And then the thing is, because I'm a crazy person, the first arc is like 8 issues long. So it became like, oh, at some point he has to take a break. And I was like, well, 4 is an issue that spotlights Raish. Let's take a break there. 5 is about all of the Robins. So I was like, he has to draw that one. Right. So 4 is about Raish, and it becomes this kind of almost standalone. It isn't standalone at all because it's very much involved in the tapestry.
Sure.
But most of it is Damian and Rachel go on a beach talking to each other for a whole issue. There is. It actually has, I think, probably the most brutal scene we have in the book in terms of the fights is Respawn. Respawn kills somebody in that issue. He kills 2 people actually in that issue, and when he kills one of them, it's like, I don't know. I was surprised we got it through. Like, I was surprised. Like, it was when I got an email from DC. And the book is still PG-13. Like it's not, it's 18 plus, right? So it's like I have to be, or 13. I think it's called 13 plus.
Yeah.
So it's not R. So I have to be careful with the amount of like violence I show. And me and Gleb talk about this a lot. Like we're always doing tricks to try to like get away with it.
Sure.
Like
silhouette or
silhouette, whatever. But in issue 4, there are 2 deaths in 4, both from Respawn. And when the script came back with notes, the notes are really pretty light on this book because I think all are on the same page. But one of the notes was like, "You cannot do that." Like one thing, you cannot do it, and it was like page 12 or something. You cannot do that, and I thought it was page 10. Like I got and I was like, "Oh, haha!" Like, yeah, you're right. I was never gonna get away with that. They weren't even talking about the thing I thought it was. They were talking about something, and I was like, "Okay, well that makes sense too. We just silhouette that." But the other thing, I was like, "But I can keep this."
Right.
They're like, yeah, that's fine. I'm like, oh, all right. Yes.
Yeah. You almost shot yourself in the foot. Don't draw attention to it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, who knows? Nothing going to print yet. I might get a call. We've gotten like, how do I put this? We've gotten like an email on every issue, essentially.
But have you considered making the blood black?
I mean, we do that sometimes.
Is that still a thing people do? Because I know that was like, that's infamous from the Death of Superman run, where it was just like, too much blood, make it black.
No, you can still do that. Yeah, especially if it gets a little excessive. Like, my impulse is excessive. Like, my impulse is like, go for it every time. And then sometimes they're just like, no, that you're hitting that line. Can you make it black? But actually, that doesn't happen very often. That hasn't happened. It's maybe darkened a little bit. It hasn't happened that often.
Right.
But yeah, I love writing this book, dude. It's like the most fun I've had at DC. I think I told you that before. It's just like it's so much fun to write this book, and Damian and the character. I'm actually writing an issue this week. That I don't know, like it's because I'm writing the end of the first arc now. It's like that whole thing has been planned in my head the whole time, So it's like it's interesting getting there, writing some of these scenes, and getting to do some of this stuff. I mean, issue 7 has like almost a 10-page long fight scene in the middle of the issue.
That's awesome.
So like where else are you gonna get to do stuff like that? Like that's part of the quest of like, well, the first arc is gonna be longer, because it's like I want to make it so that when we actually get around to the actual tournament and it starts to really roll, that I can let some of those fights, the fights that you really want to see, and you really want to like, those ones are gonna go at it, and like I want it to breathe and like let them go at it. Then let them have fun for 10 pages and just be like, I mean, I'm not going to do, there was a thing when I first started at DC, there was when I first started at DC, they sent me this script because I had to reference something, but it hadn't come out yet. They're like, here's the script. And I get the script and I'm like, the first half is missing. Like, it starts on page 11. And they're like, no, it's all there. I was like, that's weird. So go back and I look. And I find at the very beginning of the page, it says pages 1 through 10, like character fights a monster. They don't fight a robot. It was a robot. Oh. And I was like, what? But that's how sometimes plot first scripts, which I don't do, I do full. Plot first scripts sometimes are like that. And I think if you know that artist really well, you can do that. You can just be like, here, they fight a robot for 5 pages, go for it. But it was like 1 through 10.
Yeah,
like
crap.
Robot. And so when that comic came out, I found it. I'm like,
bye.
Yep. They fought a robot for 2 pages. It was awesome.
And it was awesome. It was worth it.
So sometimes it's funny, like when I write for artists, it depends. Like there's a scene in issue 3 that I couldn't figure out. I wanted Damian to do something cool, but like the Damian version of it. Like he's trying to show off. He's trying to show off, and I was trying to come up with something that was like, how do I take this one version of something that's a cliched version of it, and then like Damian it up?
Yeah.
So I asked Gleb, I'm like, hey, listen, this is what the scene is. This is what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think? And he's like, okay, let me think about it. And then like 5 minutes later, he's like, oh, he would do this. This is what he would do. And I'm like, oh man, that's great. So when I wrote that scene, at the very beginning, it's a two-page scene. At the very beginning of the page, I just wrote like, Gleb, this is what we talked about. Like, this is it. But I still broke it down. I still wrote it. But I was like, this is what we talked about. So he knows it when he goes into it. He probably had an idea in his head of what he wanted to do. But having us both there as like a team, like I'm giving him all the information I have, and then he can run with it.
Yeah.
But I think there are sometimes like, you know, okay, so for Birthright, Andre loves werewolves. Like he was obsessed with werewolves. And so he was always on me about, like, one time we went on a really long walk in New York. Like we walked from our hotel all the way to the convention center. And he was telling me all these ideas for werewolf stories. He's like, I really about werewolves. And I was like, dude, I promise you I'll give you werewolves to draw. I will figure it out. Yeah. And so at one point, we did put werewolves in the book. It became like an important plot point. And one character had to transform into a werewolf. And so for that was a moment where I was like, hey, dude, like, just draw a werewolf transformation. You know, I don't have to break it down by panels or give you super details. And so he drew a whole page of a werewolf transformation because he like knew it. And I think you have that kind of relationship with an artist. You can kind of talk with them, but in most cases, they might already know it's coming. Like I was saying about, you know, it's like Howard Porter and I have worked with each other a lot the past couple of years, and we're working on another project. And the way that one works is I usually talk to him about beforehand, and then I give him the script. He reads it, he calls me, we talk about it again, and then he starts drawing. Gotcha. So it's like, I think that way you can kind of bounce around, and then he gives me the roughs, and then we talk about it again. Cool. The book we're doing next together, he gave a bunch of roughs the other day. It was so funny. He like turned a bunch of roughs in, and then like a day later he redrew all of them because I didn't answer the email because I missed it, and I was like, stop. This looks awesome. So then on Monday morning he gave us all the roughs of the whole issue, and I read it and I was like, dude, I got nothing. Right. I was like, this is great. I had no notes. And he was like, what? No, you always have notes. And I'm like, no, I don't. Look, right now, boom, done. Like, you're good. Go. But it's one of those things where it's a really complicated issue. Where like we're doing something tricky with it, so it makes it even more complicated. And you know, it's just I don't know. But yeah, Robin, man, I love this work on this book, and I'm glad people liked issue 1. Like it seemed like it had a pretty good response, and I think
so too. Yeah,
I didn't. Like we were trying to make Mortal Kombat. Like I don't think it's a secret. Again, like it's obvious, but I think that can be fun. I don't know. We wanted to make a fun book. That was my goal.
It's so harmless and yet also integral. Like how you can tell, like when a family is of characters is expansive as the Bat Family. You know, like when someone's like kind of like driving the boat, and for that character or that universe, you can tell like who their preferences are, who they like the most, and what characters either they don't know very well or they don't regard or care about, and they kind of go by the wayside, or like, you know, at best they are forgotten, at worst they are pantsed. With Damian, I find, because I'm not the world's biggest Damian fan, but I came around thanks to you and Tomasi, like redeeming him for me in terms of Super Sons and in terms of the series, which is just cool, like and genuinely fun. And because of the journey he's been on, it's like, oh, he's a character now. Like I remember when Morrison invented Damian, and I was just like, oh no, you've ruined everything. Because when you create a character, they never leave.
Yeah,
like that's it. Like once you open that box, you can't close it again. And with Damian, when you give Batman a biological son, you've changed Robin's irrevocably forever.
Oh yeah, I mean he's been Robin now
for like at least longer than Jason was Robin.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean not longer than Tim. I mean because Tim was going from like, you know, at 91
to the reboot.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, you're talking like you could arguably say 20 years.
Yeah,
you know. So you know, Damian hasn't hit that yet, and I don't. But yeah, you're right. Like Damian is, I liked him from day one. I thought that was an interesting thing. Like you know that Grant went for it.
Yeah.
And so I've always liked Damian.
Oh yeah. I didn't want to. I was going. So I didn't want to just say like Damian sucks. Your rebuttal, but more just like, was it? How was it going? Like, because you're driving the Damian boat, right? Like that's it. Like was it kind of like, well, like everyone else in the Bat family going, well, I don't really have plans for Damian. Just put him on an island. Like, go for it. Like, take him and run with him because he can't be anywhere else.
I wanted to put him on the island. I
know. I remember that was your pitch.
Yeah, like I wanted to get him away from everybody. James had this huge plan planned out, and I don't know if he really had I don't know if James had a plan for Damian, but you know how James is that like if DC was like you could have Damian, he'd figure it out. Like,
yes.
He would, but James and he had only been writing Batman a little bit when DC approached me and was like, "Do you want to do Robin?" And I was like, "Yes." Like I think they thought I was going to be like, "Nah," because it's just Robin. It isn't like one of your books. But I'm like,
sure,
I want to do something really cool with him. I got ideas. I love that character. I've wanted to write him for 10 years. I could do that. And
right.
Well, basically my whole pitch was about that. It was like, get him away from everything for a little bit and let me just do a story over here. And it's like I think a lot of what Tomasi did and with Super Sons and with Teen Titans and everything, it's like there was so much continuity. There was so much out there. And it's all good stuff. I mean, especially the stuff Tomasi was doing, I think, obviously in Super Sons. But there was so much continuity that I was like, I need to get him away and just work on just him by himself because he was so embedded with other groups.
Right.
It was with John or it was with Bat Family or it was Teen Titans. And it was like, I need to find time to show him by himself over here and learn more about him and kind of let him. But I guess he'll use all that stuff because I'm a continuity junkie and I love the DC universe. I'm going to try and still use whatever I can. But yeah, I wanted to kind of get him just over here and run with him. And I think it went well. Like it did. I feel like the response was pretty positive. It sold really, really well. I think it was like, I mean, it was not surprising, I think, to people how well it sold, but it definitely was like, oh crap, that's a hit. Like, right. It's a good hit. I mean, for me personally, it was good timing because I was in the middle of renegotiating my contract, but it was like, it did really, really well. And so because it did so well, I think people were like, oh crap, like that's a big number. That's very good. Yes. So they were like, all right, let's, it was like, okay, cool. And so like we have all these plans already for Damian and all this stuff we're doing. Like there's this multi-stages to get us to some of the stuff we're doing next year. And Damian is a part of that equation. Mm-hmm. So,
but there's great opportunity. Like that's the thing is that, the character has an opportunity to grow and change and evolve and become something new or fresh, you can say. And it's exciting because the books, because of the nature of the book and the like direction and the pitch, basically, because it's like it's Damian Immortal Combat. Oh, cool. You get everybody. Like you get people who are like, I love Damian, of course. Ride or die, Damian, let's do this. And people who are like, Damian, but like that's a neat concept and I would like to see like where it goes, because it's not gonna be like, I assume based on it being a story that Damian won't be like the same person he was when he entered, as is the nature of story itself, and that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I wanted to, I think where he's gonna end the story, that's just the first arc. I mean, it's like the way I don't look at the way I look at the Damian book, like Robin, is that even though these first 8 issues are one story, it's like not really. I mean, it definitely continues on into next year and the plans we have and beyond. It's like, and I think people will be surprised where he's at by the time there. Like, and some of the pieces that are coming together and the conclusions that he makes as he's going along on this journey, and then the people he surrounds himself with, and we'll get some surprises. Like I said, with Connor Hawke being in the book and kind of the way they will play off each other, and
it's great.
The scene Gleb drew it's so awesome. It's like the first time they've met, right?
Technically,
the first time they actually are able to like sit down and talk, essentially,
interact.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite scenes of the book. I think people will be surprised the way that issue 3, the way it plays out, and how it impacts the book after that going forward, and the role that Connor plays in the book, and then afterward, so it's like, I don't know, it's interesting, like the stuff I have planned for the book next year, I see it all as one big arc, that just happens to get broken up into pieces so we can sell them in trades. I don't think he wants that to be like, here is this giant tomb of a trade for the first time, so we have to break them up. But
sure,
like Ian leaves the island at the end of 8, so it's like, but that doesn't mean the story is over, right? So there's more going on, but he leaves the island at the end of 8. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's fun. And then Gleb is just drawing crazy stuff all the time, and he's able to because Gleb knows those characters. Like he knows all the Robin characters, he knows all these DC characters, and he has his own like thoughts on them. So it's also he puts all that in there, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun working on the book, dude. Like
yeah. And I think this is the debut of the new costume, right? Like this was where we saw this new design, which has been a hit. Like I think people really love it, so that's exciting too.
And Gleb has a good sense for those things. I think he has a good sense for like changing stuff up and styles and stuff. And again, like he, Robin changes costumes throughout the book. It's like you have this one. I mean, this is the Robin costume for the foreseeable future.
Right.
But it's like he does have different looks throughout the book of like, well, here I'm going to wear this instead, and here I'm going to wear this instead. And it's like issue 2, I don't think he wears the Robin costume at all. Yeah, he doesn't wear the Robin costume at all in 2. So it's like. It is fun to kind of mix stuff up, and then you see him put it back on in 3, and there's like a reason why he puts it back on. So it's very much like the costume stuff does play in, and yeah, it's really fun though. Like,
but you still get to play with that. You get to play with costume changes.
Yeah. And then there's stuff later on and everything, but this is pretty much the Robin costume for the foreseeable future that he'll be wearing, and the stuff he'll be wearing next year when we get to do some fun stuff with him. I don't know. It's exciting.
Now, in regards to the trade, you mentioned, it's 8 issues. Do you ever does that throw a monkey wrench with respect to the printing process, where they're like, oh, that's 8. Normally it's 6. What are you doing? We gotta change everything. Hit the stop. Or is it like, oh no, that's it. Do they have like formats where they're like, oh, it's 10? We can make 10. Or is
there's definitely a math involved, right? There's definitely a math involved in the pricing of things, the timing of things, and when things come out, when they don't come out. But when you look at like Flash, like I did a Flash, I have it on here somewhere. The newest Flash trade that just came out is like, I think it's 8 issues in it. Like, I mean, my very first Flash trade has 9 issues in it, and I remember I got a call like really early on, and they were like, you gotta cut it down. You got to cut the art down to 6. And I was like, no, remember, we mapped it out. Like, you guys, we were all there in that room together. Like, we all sat there with a thing, and we were like, 1, 2, 3. Because originally, my initial story arc was going to be 12. And then we cut it down, and then we were like, okay, cool, we figured it out. And it was, once we got the math down, like, we all in a room together laid out 8 issues. Like, all of us together. So I can't move that without messing up the flow that's been presented to me. And so I was able to use that as like, guys, this can't change. And that's, so that's why the first trade is 9 issues, because it's the Rebirth issue plus the first 8 issues of the book.
Right.
And I don't have a problem with that.
Well, no, but like, you're not selling the book personally. Like, you're not on the hook for printing the damn thing.
I get phone calls occasionally about things.
Okay.
But I'm like, come on, like this is cool. Let's do this. And then, like
they're
I said,
like,
I get very annoying because I'm like, well, here's why. Like I always get into a whole, and I think having that first Flash trade be the 9 issues gave me precedent to be like,
oh sure,
look, it sold well. Look.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I definitely get a call every once in a while, but we talk about it and we figure it out, and then then it becomes a math problem that isn't my math problem to solve. Right. My math problem is more about the story constantly and trying to make it in certain ways and stuff. But yeah, 6 issues. I mean, that's why Infinite Frontier is 6 issues. But the trick is Infinite Frontier is every issue is 30 pages. Right. So it makes it so it's going to be a big. And then we have the Secret Files, which is like 80 pages long.
You gonna slap that in there? It's gonna be its own thing.
Yeah, it's gonna be big. Well, then you include like that first Infinite Frontier trade is gonna be crazy because it's gonna have the 6 issues that are 30 pages each, plus the Secret Files, which is 6 chapters that are 12 pages each.
Right.
Then it's gonna have the 64-page 0 issue.
There's no way you could put them all in one trade.
Dang, how else do you do it?
You put up multiple volumes.
No, it's one giant one.
Good.
Infinite Frontier is basically all about. I mean, it's about like a mystery. Again, story wise, it's about a mystery in the universe, and the characters starting to piece together that something's going on, right? It's like because you have Darkseid kind of behind the scenes messing with stuff, and you start to see really the beginning and the ramifications of that, and like what he's actually kind of up to, and how he's like silently seeding things in the DCU to make things bad, and that's kind of what this is about. And you kind of see that like there's a human element. There's people in the book that are just like the multiverse is bad, and we have to cut it out. Like there's a scene in issue 1 where Bones and I always use the example. It's like Bones and Cameron Chase, they're talking, and first he's like he says to her, he's like, do you remember when things were less weird around? Like, you have a skull for a head, and do you recognize that like nobody in this restaurant right now is reacting to that?
Yeah,
like you're old news. And he's like, well, he's like, yeah, I don't like that. Like that people are used to the weirdness now. That's not how it should be. And he's like, the world was destroyed and rewritten, and beings from another multiverse like came and messed with us. And she's just like, yeah, which time?
Right.
Like, which one? And he's like,
that's the problem.
He's like, that's the problem. We have to figure something out. And so you have this kind of story about like things going on in the multiverse, and the characters in the multiverse realizing something is up. Like Darkseid is up to something. Plus, there's other things going on. And then people on Earth being like, hey, listen, like
this is the way it is.
Danger. Well, but the multiverse is a danger, and we can't. So there's also like moves going on here, and so it's. I think the closest I can compare it to is something like how 52 was. Like 52, they had all these different story threads, and then gradually saw they were one story and they all connect. And so it's almost like the first issue is really establishing this kind of mystery right out the gate of like, we've already established the stuff from Darkseid and things going on here, but then it becomes this. It's interesting. Like it's a mystery that you kind of already know who did it.
Yeah.
But you kind of piece together why they did it, and that becomes kind of this whole thing, and then. The whole book, like all 6 issues, are really about placing everything on the table we need to get what we want for next year to do an even bigger story next year. So it really is like, this is the beginning, the countdown, for lack of a better phrase, is like, this is really the countdown to other stuff that's coming. So it's like, we're getting everything on the table and getting it on a way that kind of breathes. Because part of it is like, I recognize there was a lot of, event fatigue, right? Yeah. Like event fatigue is real. So it's like, one of the priorities he had with this was that metal and death metal were these huge like symphonies, right? Like, obviously like Scott would talk about their concerts, their giant concerts. And so with this, one of the things when we first started talking about it last year, Marie Javins was like, we should do a house show. Like, that's what we need. We need somebody to do something that is a quieter event, a quieter story, that is much more of a house show, like, and a smaller venue. Let's do that. But then use that to kind of take a little bit of a breather on the big everything's exploding all the time to kind of ground things a little bit.
Yeah.
And then stuff starts exploding again.
Of course.
So let's get you kind of there, so you get to kind of like bring yourselves back into it, but then also make the book kind of about that. Like the book is kind of about how it's like Bones essentially has event fatigue. Like Bones is like, these things keep happening and they have to stop. Like, this can't, there's a story coming with him in one of the secret files where he's interrogating somebody who died in death metal, but they're alive now.
Right.
So he's just kind of like, so what happened? Like, he just wants to know that he's talking to them about it. And then they're like, I don't remember anything, but they turned into a monster, because that's what happened in death metal. Everyone transformed into something else.
Right.
So they transformed into something else. And so he's just like, so what do you remember? Like,
let me put, what is it? Yeah, that's actually that's so smart, because you've created an analog character for the audience who is skeptical of what you're doing, who is on a journey that is inherently destructive if you pull the thread of serialized comic book fiction. That's a cool idea. I like that.
So Bones and Chase are playing different readers. Like you're saying,
right.
Bones is playing one version, and he's trying to convince her there's a problem.
Right.
And so there's a scene where she goes to interrogate Batman and Superman, and Batman and Superman are like, we filled out the paperwork, it's all fine.
Right.
Like, everything is good. We turned in the paperwork. Don't worry. And she is just like,
no.
saying the Justice League took care of it isn't going to fly anymore.
Exactly.
Like, this is a problem. You know, she literally, there's a part where she's walking with Superman, and this is like me calling myself out. She's walking with Superman in the Hall of Justice, and she's like, "Is it true you had a prison under here? Like under the Hall of Justice, you had a full-on prison?" And he's just like, "Keep walking." Just like he doesn't want to. He's like, you know, the last time it was funny. There's a whole scene where she's like, she makes a comment to him, and he's just like, "Oh, are we friends?" And she's like, "I thought everybody was Superman's friend." And he's like, "The last time I saw you, you tried to arrest my wife." You know, it's like. And so when she gets in there and she starts asking all these questions, they're like, "Are we under investigation?" And she's like, "We just want to know what happened."
Right.
Like, the world changed. It ended. All these crazy things happened. Multiple people rewrote reality multiple times in the last few years.
Yeah.
People want to know what happened. That's it.
Yeah.
And then she's coming to them, and it's like, and that's a big part of the book, and also her journey of trying to understand all of these things.
Right.
Is part of that book, and there's also President Superman in the multiverse. He gets involved in a mystery with a character we haven't like. There's another. So with Infinite Frontier, you know, we have President Superman, we have Alan Scott and Obsidian and Jade, and then some other JSA characters. You got Barry Allen involved, and then we have Roy Harper, and they have Chase and Bones. Like, it is this huge cast, and they're all in different parts of the DCU. Mm-hmm. And we get to see the DCU from all their point of views, and then we slowly see them come together once they start piecing together, like, oh, something very bad is happening.
Right.
And superheroes don't necessarily know about it because of them. It's like old news. Like, this is like, oh, something bad is happening. It's Wednesday. It's fine, you know. But so they're starting to piece together this thing, and they all kind of start interlocking with each other. But there's another character we haven't shown yet that's like a major part of the story that I think will start making people go, oh, that's what this is really about. And I think we're revealing that in like 2 weeks. I think we're gonna show people, because it's in the preview. It's in the first couple of pages. But it becomes this thing of like, why is that character here, and what happened, and where did they come from? So we're gonna play with that, and then we'll play with a lot of multiverse shenanigans in the book. But for me, it was about, again, it's like how 52 was. I think 52 had a certain kind of pacing to it, and it allowed you to see the DCU from different points of view that weren't Batman, Superman, or Wonder Woman. But yeah, with that book, I mean, yeah, it's going to set the table for a lot of other stuff. Like, I think people a year from now are going to be like, when did that happen? Oh, it happened in that book. And you're going to start seeing these things. And again, like, President Superman will play a bigger role in DCU. And this is really about getting him kind of like edging into those roles. Like, I didn't want to just throw some of these characters at people. I wanted to kind of reintroduce them. And that's why we did the Secret Files, where it was like, we did a President Superman Secret File that was like, this is who this person is. And then we just ease you into the stories. I mean, I have this giant whiteboard in my office back here that has like it's on the other side of the camera.
Smart.
That has, I know. Could you imagine what's behind me one day?
I know, right?
You would, within a quick screen grab, you basically would know all of DC's plans for like 2 years. You'd be like, oh, okay. Because I have back here, I have like the Infinite Frontier plan, and then I have like the 2022 plan beneath it, and it's just like this whole, how it all interlocks with each other. It's on the other side here. So every once in a while I have to look up and be like, what am I doing again? Oh, that's right. Yeah. You know, but there's all kinds of cool stuff coming with this book. I mean, I think it will really surprise people that it is like this kind of, it is an event book, but it's much more of a mystery, right? Yeah. It's much more, we're trying to lay this stuff out to get you in this place where then by the ending you're going to be like, holy shit, like that's huge, and that is going to definitely impact DC moving forward in a lot of ways. And then once all these characters go through this journey together, and then when we splinter them back out into the DCU, like once the story is over and everybody goes their separate ways, then it's going to start ping-ponging around the DCU and start changing things around, and then we'll get a bunch of books that spin out of it in the end, and you know, then you'll start seeing how this impact hits, and then it'll all come back again next year. All this stuff will come around. But that's what this is really, the beginning. It's like the beginning of like a countdown to something bigger. That's what Infinite Frontier, the 6 issues, are.
Very exciting, man. That's very cool.
It's pretty crazy. I think the stuff we're doing in there is going to be I don't know, it's fun. It's fun to show the DCU from different points of view. I mean, you look at how like JSA was. Yeah. Like when Jeff was doing JSA, he was showing you this particular part of the DCU in a different way than JLA was, right? Totally. It was a little more grounded in places. And so that's what I was trying to do here, was make something like that is a little more just grounded in places. But again, I want to show you a post-event DCU.
Yeah.
You know, like that's really what it's about. Is it's like not only the characters in the story, but like people on the street were affected. There's a scene where they talk about it. They're just like, oh yeah, like the Batman Who Laughs came and like destroyed the world, and you're like, well, who's the Batman Who Laughs? Like,
right.
you know, it's like some people remember and some people don't. It's an interesting thing of what is life like in the DCU post a giant event. Like, and
Yeah.
there was a lot of events in a row.
Right.
All of them were rewriting reality. Like, what do people on the street think about that? And the idea that like the multiverse is real. Because could you imagine you live in the DCU? One day you look up in the sky and it's red skies one day.
Yep.
And you look in the sky and there's like multiple Earths. And you're like, what is happening? What is that? Like, and I wanted to show that along with showing other superhero stuff. I wanted characters to be like, do you remember that time there was red skies? And be like, yeah, what was that about?
Right.
You know, like,
remember that time I had all this goth outfit on? I looked like an S&M bondage guy, and the world was a big wasteland, and my grandmother got unmade, and like one reality I have cousins, the other one I don't. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what ends up, but all I know is, you know, it's Tuesday.
That's what, yeah, that's part of the story. Is people
that's kind of fun.
Some people don't believe it.
Right.
Some people are like, no, the multiverse isn't real. Like, that's a part of the story. And
I love that. That's always been one of my favorite aspects of another universe we won't refer to, where, you know, it's like if a big purple monster showed up and was like, I'm gonna eat everything, it's like, how many people would be like, fake?
Oh yeah, well look at, I mean, you can talk about Marvels. I'm a Marvel fan.
I know.
Marvel stuff. I got this giant toy right here. This was pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah, it was good. I actually texted Donnie when I got it because I put the old man Thanos head on there. I posted it to, and I sent Donnie a text when I got it, and he was like, "Oh, that's real," and I'm like, "Hell yeah, it's real. It's cool."
Can you believe there's no null figure?
What's that?
Can you believe there's no null figure? By the way,
dude, I was texting about that when I got this one. Yeah, I was like, I feel like normally the Marvel is so ahead on that kind of stuff.
On top of that shit, but no null
figure. Yeah, it's a matter of time.
Yeah, right.
Probably, I think right now the wave, if you want to get into a whole Marvel Legends conversation, I think the whole Marvel priority right now is clearly the TV shows. Like, that's the wave.
That whole wave is just Disney Plus shows. Yeah.
But dude, I think like I am so impressed by Marvel's ability of how they roll things out, like in terms of this giant tapestry. Like the fact that spoilers for Falcon Winter Soldier, you know, it's like Captain America Winter Soldier, right? It's like, you know, Friday morning, they're like, here's the episode. Boom. That day, they're like, check out all this cool shit. All this art comes out. Like, all of a sudden, it's all about, you know, Sam as Captain America. And then Monday morning, they're just like, and here's the toys. You can order them now.
Yep.
Like, that's the way to do it. I feel like that stuff makes me, like, so excited, where I'm like, that's the kind of coordination that I love. And Marvel does that really well. And I think, you know, this last couple of months, they clearly are like, I mean, they were probably waiting too, because also the Loki toy is in that set, and all the Vision toys are in there, and they were probably just waiting. And the moment that Falcon stuff hit, where he was Captain America, they were just like, "Okay, great, here's all the toys.
Yeah,
all the toys. You can order them right now. Here's a hot toy too. You know, Sideshow is probably just, oh, thank God, here we can finally show this cool thing. You know, it's $300.
it's $900.
Oh my God, dude. Mitch was talking about, because Mitch gets a lot of hot toys, like Mitch Jards.
Oh God.
Right.
Yeah.
So he ordered it that day, and I felt slightly ashamed, because I was looking at the Marvel Legend, being like, I might get that Marvel Legend, and I might just buy them all. That way I can get the wings.
Yeah.
It's a figure wing thing. So I'm like, I might just get them all. And then Mitch did this whole thing about like, those toys are so cheap. Look at this beautiful hot toy. Like, all this,
oh.
I'm like, how much is it? How much is it? If it's 100, if it's 120, maybe. But if it gets up to a certain point,
he's like, it's like 3. Like,
I know. Well, I have the only hot toy I have is I have the Batman 89. It's weird. 89 hot toy. It's right here, but it's the Batman Returns logo. So it's what I call the correct logo.
Yeah, it is the correct logo.
It's like, it has a little bit of snow at the bottom, so really it's more of a like 89 and Returns Batman. But
yes,
yeah, it has in the package, they don't say it's Batman Returns. They say it's like Batman 89 or whatever, but it has it has the correct logo. Dude, in the DC building, when you go into the actual DC offices, they have in one of the hallways, they have a huge Batman, and it's the costume. It's like one of the they use.
Yeah.
And every time I walk by it, I'm like, man, this is so cool. But this fucking logo, because it's the logo from '89.
I know. Yeah.
What's funny is like sometimes I'll go through and I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been Tom. Like Tom King and I were walking through there one day, and I was like, "Man, we both were like, this is so cool." But I was like, "Man, this stupid thing." And he was like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Look, dude, like
that little extra whoop
has a little thing, like, and yeah, it has a little extra thing." And he was like, "I have never noticed.
Never noticed it."
Oh, dude, you don't see it until you see it. I think. Yeah. I think once you see it, it's there forever.
As a kid, as a child who wasn't old enough to see Batman '89, I was like, "What? Why do they fuck up the logo?"
Yeah,
like the marketing for the movie is the logo, and then you see Batman, he's wearing a different logo. I'm like, "What is that?" And you know what that is? Hollywood, baby. That is just Hollywood going, "Let me put my little spin on it." Little thing.
Like I was at a panel one time where Del Toro was talking about making Hellboy,
right?
And he was talking about how he was at this one particular studio. And they were like, "Can you make Hellboy so he's human, and then he only turns into Hellboy when he's angry?" And like, that's the whole. And he said this thing, and I think about this ever since then. He said it because it is true. I apologize to Hollywood, but in my experience, it's true. He was like, they always want to stick their dick in it. That was what he said. Like, and I like they can't help themselves. Like they gotta, they gotta, and it's fascinating. You can tell when if you're having a conversation with somebody and they're pitching you or you're pitching them, and you can tell when they're just like they gotta throw something in there. They have to.
Put my little thing on there. Well, that way they can point at it and say, "That was me, right there." Yeah, that's my signature.
Brought that to the table. I mean, I get that too. Like even in comics, there are times where it's like, how would I put this? So a lot of us creators, we all talk to each other about a lot of stuff, and there are times where, like, how do I put this? We share ideas with each other.
Yes.
And so there's times where something will become really popular. Like recently, it was a character that was introduced that was popular and it sold well. I named that character, but it's not a book that I'm working on. So it's like sometimes you're like, I'm glad that worked out.
Does anybody know that I did that? Yeah.
But we do that. We all share ideas with each other. We joke around. There's a scene there is one scene in Tom's Batman run that we were at a bar. We were at a bar talking about the scene, and he had it completely different. It was drastically different, and I was like, "No, man, that's not how that would play out. That would play out like this." And I told him like beat for beat how it would play out. Like it was drastically different from what he was planning. And then that scene is in Batman. It's in
he just did it.
He did it. He did the exact scene I told him.
He's like, "Well, you told me that was the way it would go, and I can't argue with that."
People like that scene. I'm always like, that was
my scene.
But there's times where there's stuff that I do that there was stuff in Flash that obviously I got advice from people or talking to people. And, I remember when I was working on the Gorilla Grodd arc in Flash, I talked to Scott about that one a lot because I was stuck on something with it, and I called him at like midnight and we talked it out. So it's sometimes, and same with him, like talking to him about metal and death metal and All-Star Batman, like mostly metal and death metal though. We would talk about all kinds of ideas, and so we definitely like share stuff with each other. But it is kind of funny sometimes. Like you do poke it, and then later on you want to be like, "Yeah, I named that."
Right. Yeah. I'm the guy who fucked up Batman's logo. I'm the worst. That movie looks really weird.
Out there, it's just like, oh man,
right?
That was my vision.
Yeah, that's my vision. I changed it.
They wanted it to be, and then it got all messed up after that. Yeah.
I
don't know. But yeah, Infinite Frontier. I'm curious to see what people are gonna think about it, because we're gonna have it ready to show people in like a week or so, and then it's out toward the end of June, and it's like. It is definitely a quieter story than a lot of stuff, but I wanted to tell something that was a little more character based. I mean, there are moments in things like Identity Crisis that are the quieter moments that are just with the characters, and I wanted to kind of explore that. And we haven't seen a lot of these characters. Like you haven't really seen Alan Scott and Obsidian and Jade. You haven't really seen President Superman, and Roy Harper's been dead for like 3 years.
Yeah.
And obviously Barry plays a big part of it. I mean, Barry's really about, like, how do I put this without spoiling things? Barry's role in it is crucial. Like, he plays a really big part, but it's more about what happens at the ending with him that will then catapult us to other stuff. So it's like, and obviously I've written a lot of Barry. It's weird how Barry became like originally when we first started Time with Barry wasn't going to be that big a part of it, and then it was like they were like, "Oh, we want Barry to go explore the multiverse," and I was like, "Done, I'll take him. Let's go." I kind of wanted to take Wally, but it was tough. I thought I told you before I don't want to be selfish because it was like I wanted to take Wally, but Wally had an opportunity to basically run the book, like to have his book. So I'm like, all right, fine, like Wally can stay in his book. It's his turn. He earned it. Let me take Barry over here, and then Barry will be at Infinite Frontier. And then, but then it ended up like, it was weird. Like once Barry got into the story, and once I figured out what I was going to do with it, and how it was going to impact the stuff next year, it was like, oh, it always had to be Barry. It couldn't be, you know. It's like Barry's role as somebody who, you know, he's the first person to cross over. I mean, he was the first person to jump from multiverse, like from world to world in the multiverse. That it made me be like, oh, it had to be him. Right. Like he's the one. I mean, there's a scene where a character literally says to him, like, this all started because of you. Like, did you think there'd be no repercussions of you jumping from world to world back then? You know, so that's like part of the story going forward. You'll see. Like he's interesting. He only has a few pages each issue, but it all is getting him to a very particular place so that it blows up and becomes a big thing. I think I'm really curious because I'm not holding anyone's hands with this. Like, I'm not. There's no captions in any of it, so I'm not like really trying to explain it to you. But I'm really curious to see what people are going to think when they start getting and they see the mystery. Like by the time we get to issue 3, the mystery is like the characters start to meet each other for the first time, and the mystery starts to kind of make characters kind of collide with each other. Yeah. So I'm curious if people are going to, by the time, like what they're going to think, like how you're going to see this story kind of start to fold together. If you're going to be like, this is like it might even feel like an anthology at one point. It's going to feel a little bit like they're so separate. And then by the time you get to 2, you're going to be like, oh no. And then 3, it's like, oh, this is really
coalescing. That's dope. I think that's what people are hungry for. I think that especially for people who are like strong vocal critics of DC, this is what they've been hungry for. At least from the pitch. I mean, like I'll have to read it. I mean, 0 was fun, so we'll see how 1 goes. But like, I think that's what they're looking for. I think because you know, whenever anybody is like DC, you know, what are they talking about? Their favorite book? It's 52. It's always like, you know, it's about a bunch of quiet characters who are trying to solve a mystery, who are background characters. They're subservient to the big 3, and it's like, here they are, and they're figuring it out.
Yes, we talk about this a lot. That it's like, I think one of the things I find exciting about DC this year and this next year and some of the plans we have for next year is that, like, I love those characters. I love Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. And but there are times where the characters around them can be more interesting at times. But what they do is that they provide you a point of view of that character you love, or they give of their universe, right? Like every once in a while when you're reading Superman, you might have like a Lois issue. It's about Lois, but really it's about Superman. Or you know what I mean? It's like it's about Jimmy, really about Superman. Like those things are always fun to do. And I think the DCU is so wide. And I want to see some of these stories from those points of view we haven't normally seen. Like let's see some of these event type things that are coming and show them from a point of view we haven't seen over and over, because they're used to it in a way, right? Like like you were saying, it's like if you're using the Marvel as an example, right? Like if Galactus shows up one day in New York, Silver Surfer, the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, all of them are just like, yo, I've seen this guy. Like, it's not impressive anymore. You're not like, oh my God. But what about when Miles saw him for the first time?
Right.
You know, it's like Miles sees Galactus and is like, what is this? Like, I think that is something that maybe we're missing in some places, and I want to get back to that. I want to have a sense of awe of the DCU, and the way you can do that is by introducing new stuff, but also introducing characters who then get to see it for the first time. Like, you know, Tim, like I think when I first started reading DC, you know, it's like it was post-Crisis, and I wasn't like as hooked, but I got hooked around the early 90s, like probably around 90, like right on 90. I was already getting really hooked. Yeah, it was good. And then 92 was when I was like, okay, I guess I'm addicted to this. But part of that was because of all these new characters. So it's like I got to see, you know, we go back and look at Detective at that time when Tim Drake was introduced. I mean, it was his point of view. I mean, you basically followed Tim around, especially during that initial story with him. That allowed me as a kid to be reintroduced to Batman through Tim's eyes.
Yeah.
And you know, when you look at like the Superman, when Superman died, and we got to see kind of the mythology of Superman change, and then there were 4 different Superman characters, and we got to see kind of his world through the 4 different Superman. Then you got Connor, who's a kid who's also being brought into this, and you know, then Hal goes crazy. You get Kyle,
Yeah.
and you know, Kyle, you know, is able to come in and is brand new to us as an audience, but also is brand new to everything about being a Green Lantern. Everything about the whole mythology is brand new to him.
Yeah.
And so I get to go on that journey with him and get to see how awesome Green Lanterns are. And it doesn't negate what came before, right? Like they were able to pull it in. I mean, I know there were people mad that what happened with Hal, but it allowed you to kind of bring it in, and we got back to it. You know, it took 10 years.
Well, and like what's funny is that like Mars is like there's like 3 or 4 different story arcs in which we remind you, like Hal was great, but Kyle's Green Lantern now. Like at least 3 different story arcs, including a Silver Surfer crossover and an Alien crossover, where we're like, hey, Kyle's it now. Like,
yeah, I know, but you know, so I think that is fun to do, and it allows you to honor what was coming before, but to show from a different point of view.
Yeah,
and I think that's the stuff I always really like. And again, like, you know, Wally's a great example of that is we got to see Wally's journey of being Flash. And then once you introduce Bart into the equation, you get to see another point of view from a new character. And then in a way, it makes it more accessible because then you're able to just be like, I mean, X-Men did the same thing, right? Because you would have the new X-Men characters get introduced, and then you get Kitty Pryde.
Yeah.
And then you get, well, I think it was Rogue, and then Kitty Pryde, and then Jubilee. Mm-hmm. Like, they have a history of, like, introducing, and they all become friends with Wolverine for some reason. But it's like, you know, introducing these characters, and they use that as a way of, like, bringing you as a reader back in.
Yeah.
They don't change. They don't, like, radically change the mythology of the character or those characters. They just give you another opportunity to see it from a new angle.
Yep.
I think that's the stuff that we're doing now, and that's the stuff about Infinite Frontier. It was like, let me take a bunch of characters and show the DCU post-event, post all this crazy stuff from their points of view. And that's a big part of the stuff even next year is like talking about that, about some of the bigger things we have planned for next year. That is a major part of the conversation is like, how do we show that from a different point of view? And that's, like you said, like 52. One reason why 52 worked was it was the DCU from those characters' points of view. I mean, you look at, I always find that really interesting. I mean, when you look at something like Infinite Crisis, for example, Infinite Crisis is mostly from the point of view of the Crisis characters. You know, it's from Superman and Alexander and Superman and Lois. There's stuff in there like Power Girl and Connor takes on a role, and obviously Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman are a big part. But really, I mean, literally that first issue is you're seeing what they're seeing.
Exactly.
And they're commenting on it. It's such an interesting like way of bringing you in, but bringing you in because it tells you something about where DCU was at the time. It tells you about who those 4 characters are, even though we haven't seen those 4 characters in 20 years.
Right.
Like it was an interesting way of kind of bringing you in, and I find this stuff really cool, and I think people like it. I think that's what people want. They want to be able to like. They don't want us to completely wreck their favorite characters.
Yep.
I'm not interested in either, you know. So it's like I think you can kind of mix things up and tell a story with them.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I'm excited to see it. And I'm sure everyone else is as well. Or if they haven't already heard, they should be because this is
pre-order. Pre-order Infinite Frontier, and I think you'll be excited to see what it is and where it's going.
Yes, good. I like that you subtly pre-order it too because it tells people that you want it. It's the only way to do it.
And because I mean, if you talk to your comic store about it, I think it helps them just know that people are actually interested in it.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point. Like, because you worked in a comic store, you know, like how they get their information.
Yeah, I mean, you get a little bit from the internet, from different websites and from Twitter, but I mean, really, the main thing is if somebody asks for it, that's the quickest way for them to be like, "Oh, this is something," you know. And it's like, I think right now with retailers, it's still a hard time. Like we're still in the pandemic, like we're coming out of it in some ways, but it's like whatever you can do to help retailers get like stay on their footing, you know, like a lot of them, man, I mean, like you can tell retailers really went through hell this last year, and it's like they're really tough and they made it work, and they were really inventive to try to find ways to make it work. So whatever you do to help them, and whatever you do to like basically give them information, it's like, I don't know, if you really like your comic store, you should tell them what you like and try to and it helps us out too, because then we kind of figure things out of what you're actually interested in. Because at the end of the day, the thing we look at are those sales numbers. Just it's like all the other stuff is great and cool. There was a thing. This is a weird tangent to end on. There was a thing a few years ago. There was a DC book that people were bashing, and we would see it online. People would bash it, and then we would look at the sales, and we're like, "Oh my crap, this thing is selling like crazy."
Yeah.
What's going on? So then I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go look. What's the #1 reviewed book? Like at this time, I looked at what the #1 reviewed book was in all of comics, and I looked at it, and I was like, okay, how much did that book sell that month, the same month? And I was able to do some research, and I found it, and it sold 750 copies.
Oh my god!
And I was like, I mean, that stuff matters, but it matters in different ways. But
yes,
the thing that we definitely look at when you're talking about people getting paid and jobs and all that, the thing we look at is those sales. So it's like, if there's a book you love, I'm not saying you should go out and buy 10 copies of it, but you should. No, I think that,
why not?
But you should definitely talk about it. Talk about it and tell your retailer this is something I really like, and explain why you like it or whatever, and just engage and have fun, and then try to, it helps your book out. It definitely helps your book out, because if you love a book, if you really love this book, any book you're reading, and you don't talk about it, or you don't tell the retailer like, hey, I want to subscribe to this on a regular basis, they don't really know, and that you might show up one day and they ordered 2 copies of it. That sucks. That happened to me a few times. I've had moments where I forgot to pre-order something. I walk into a comic book store and I'm like, oh damn it! Like there's because one of the shops I used to go to that was the closest to me, they would sell out of stuff on Wednesday all the time, because they were mostly a subscriber store. Like they had like one of those walls of boxes, of subscribers, and that was like the location for most of the subscribers in Portland would always use this one location. And so for them, they weren't as concerned about shelf copies. They were concerned about the boxes. So I would come in and they'd be out of stuff like Wednesday first thing, and I'd be like, damn it. When Vision #1 came out, I read a preview of it, and so I wanted to get it. And so I didn't pre-order it like a dummy. And I show up and they were sold out of it, but they had like issue 1, they had for $10. And so I bought that. They had it as a variant. And so I bought that variant just because I wanted to read it.
Yeah.
I didn't know Tom at the time. Like we hadn't met. Now I would just call Tom and like, send me a PDF. I just text him. Like I read Supergirl #1 already, and it's great.
Oh,
it's really
I gotta
good.
get that. When does it come out? Really, do you know?
It comes out in June. Yeah, it's like middle of June. FOC is Sunday. That's how I know. But I read it a few weeks ago. I think it's like one of the best things Tom's done for DC.
Oh well, great.
It's really good. It's really good. I don't know. It's a really interesting thing. I think that it'll be a cool book when because it's only 8 issues long. It's a
really
a series. Yeah, it's just a mini. So I think once it's collected, I think people will see like it's a good Supergirl story. Like
sweet.
It's just real good. But yeah, FOC for Infinite Frontier isn't until the end of the month. It's the 27th. So
you got some time.
Yeah, you're gonna see like not this week, probably starting next week. You're gonna see me just like a crazy person, just showing art, showing stuff, teasing stuff. I'm gonna spoil some shit because I just gotta
get it.
I want to get out there and be like, look at this cool thing. Look at this person. This person's in the book. Oh man, but this was happening, and just getting and stuff. It'll be really interesting. The line of trying to promote a book without spoiling it.
Yes. Yeah, because at what point are they like, well, I'm good. I heard what happens in the issue. I'm good.
Yeah. Well, I think that was part of the problem we had with Batman and Superman was that originally it was planned we weren't going to tell anybody who Batman and Laugh had affected. We weren't going to tell anybody. It was going to be like a surprise as we were reading. And then they decided we're going to tell you all of it. When I was doing Justice League versus Suicide Squad, we spent like 3 days in a room in Burbank, a bunch of editors, me, Steve Orlando was there because he was going to do JLA. I have pictures of it. We had this whiteboard of every villain that had not been used since New 52. We had this huge wall of villains. And then it was a group of villains that we have used. So it was like a weird mix. And it was just like, okay, who has plans for what? Who are we not messing with? Who can we do here? Who can we do there? What is the running theme? And trying to figure this whole thing out. So we spent days and days and days and days on this. Yeah. And we finally figured out the crew, and we're all like, cool. I remember there was one, they didn't want us to use Lobo. Like me and Steve Orlando were like, we should make Lobo one of the villains, and we should bring back the original Lobo. And this is where he's been, And they were like, I don't know. We don't want to do that. So they picked another character. They were like, well, let's not use Lobo. Let's use this character. And I was like, all right, fine. That's a bummer because I think Lobo would be really cool. But fine, whatever. I go home, and then on Friday I get a call, and they're like, actually, it was funny because the editor called me and was like, well, I got bad news. You got to use Lobo. And I was like, yeah, that's what I wanted. Yeah, I wanted to use Lobo. So, but then like a month after that, I get a call and they're just like, we're going to reveal everybody, all the villains that show up at the end. And I'm like, that is the whole ending.
Yeah.
Like, and I couldn't even convince him not to use Max Lord because Max Lord is like the big ending villain.
Yeah.
And I was like, just hide Max Lord maybe. And they were like, no, we're going to reveal all of it. And I was like, oh my God. You know, so it's tough sometimes. But at the same time, like there's, you know, there's a belief among some people, I don't agree, that spoilers don't hurt sales. And I don't agree. I think you look at the way, what I say anytime, especially the last couple of months, anytime somebody would say that to me, here's what I would ask him. I'd be like, you know, I have a friend that works on WandaVision, and I could tell you the ending to WandaVision right now if you want. And they'd be like, no. No. And I'm like, oh, so that means something to you now. Like, you don't want me to spoil the end of this thing. Interesting, because it means something. Oh, okay. Like, yeah, so I do think spoilers matter. And I think there's a way of rolling them out in a way that's fun. There's a way of doing it that you can roll them out a little bit and tease them without giving it away completely. Yes. And then you want people to experience it when they read it. That's part of the enjoyment of it. If they get to the end, they know the ending. That sucks. Like completely. That. Yeah, it totally takes. I think it takes some of like, you know, I don't know. Once we were talking about Invincible, it's like I know with Invincible they changed things around a bit, and that was smart because you know you don't know what you don't know. So if you're a new audience, you don't recognize it's different. But if you're someone like me who read that when it was coming out, it gives me a little like, well, I think I know what's coming, and then you move things around on me a little bit. Like I think that stuff is fun, but I don't know. I think we need more surprises.
I agree.
We're all pretty used to what we think comics are. And so surprises are rare and hard to come by, but if you can pull them off, I think it's like the way to go. I think it's really
people
cool.
remember the surprise sometimes more than like any other aspect of the story if they are properly surprised.
Thunderbolts went over 100 issues because of the ending of issue 1.
That's right.
Like I love that book. I read it the whole time. It was one of my favorite comics. But that ending to issue 1, I remember reading it as a kid and getting the last page and being like, "What?" Like it blew my mind. And I think if we can pull off stuff like that now, that rush. I don't know. Like me as a creator, I feel like that rush of being able to do that. And we talk about that. Like there's stuff coming that we're trying to keep under wraps. Well, like Robin dying at the end of issue 1 was something that didn't get leaked. You know, so it's like. Things like that, we try to not give it away. Well, like that with the solicits, like the solicits on Robin are kind of misleading on purpose. Same thing with Infinite Frontier. Like I either write them or I make sure I read them before they go out so I can kind of like tweak them because I don't want the solicits to necessarily give anything away, but I also recognize these solicits are also kind of part of the experience of reading the book.
Yes,
because it gives you an expectation. It's almost like a little mini trailer, right? So it's like. It gives you a little bit of a taste, but if I can play with that expectation that you now have because of the solicit, that's the way to go. And so that's why, like, the solicits are a lot of times on my book. Solicits are misleading on purpose, and it's funny because I see people get like kind of frustrated. They'll read them and they're like, "Oh, I can't believe this thing's gonna happen," and I'm like, "Oh, just read the book. Just read the book. You'll see, it'll be fine."
Yeah.
All right, I should let you go. I gotta write comic books.
Yeah, comic books, man. Well, thank you so much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure to pre-order Infinite Frontier if you are of a mind. And otherwise, we'll see you guys next time with another episode. Josh, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thank you so much.
All right. So long, everybody.